We're going to open the meeting. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Town of East Bridgewater Planning Board. It's Monday evening, June 7th, 2021. It's 7:05 p.m. We'll get to the first order of business on our agenda, and we'll save other business until later. First item of business on the agenda is Speedway Park Llc. Applicant is requesting a special permit. We held a public hearing, had time to review the plan, so I'd ask at this point in time, if any members who were present at that public hearing would like to offer a motion.
I would move to grant the application for a special permit with a condition as follows, with whatever the standard conditions are, plus a condition which says that no permit for the construction of any building shall issue until the applicant has informed the building inspector and through him this board of the intended use or uses of that building, and then that this board has by vote at a regular meeting affirmatively determined that the use or uses is consistent with the provisions of the zoning bylaws, section 5K.
Okay, so that's a motion to approve. Do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
So that's a motion, Riley. Second, Ken. So we'll go through the approval standard conditions. Number one, special permit site plan approval has been granted to the above-named applicant. I'll read the whole thing. These are fairly important, so, especially at this site. Special permit site plan approval was granted to the above-named applicant for the property and site plan as identified above. It remains in effect as a permanent set of conditions for the use of the land. No changes to the conditions listed herein will be allowed without prior written approval of the planning board. Any transfer of this permit to a different applicant shall be deemed to require action by the planning board as a special permit site plan modification and must be duly filed as such and approved prior to any such changes. No special permit, site plan, or any modification thereof shall take effect until a copy of the decision has been filed with the office of the town clerk and the copy of the decision bearing the certification of the town clerk's office that the 20-day appeal period has lapsed and that no appeal has been filed, or that after the decision has been filed in the office of the town clerk that no appeal has been filed, or it has been dismissed or denied, and that a certified copy of that letter is recorded at the registry of deeds for the county and district in which the land is located. Developers shall provide the planning board with copies of any and all order of conditions issued by the appropriate agency under both the Wetlands Protection Act and the Stormwater Management Bylaw in the town of East Bridgewater. Prior to issuance of any building certificates, those documents must be reviewed and certified to be complete. And then, no building permit shall be issued until the town clerk's certified copy of the special permit and site plan as referenced above has been recorded by the applicant at the Plymouth County Registry of Deeds, and proof of recording has been presented to the Planning Building Department. Okay, then. Kevin's condition will be condition number 6. I've come up with a couple of things that are potential problems that we want to address at this point. I did review multiple times the filings with various departments. Although the description of this is varies between the different department filings, from contractor base to everything in the industrial zone, in our case. I'm going to pay attention to a couple of things here that are very critical. Number one, the actual parking use is going to be determined by the final use in each one of the units within this development. Number two, any off-site parking by definition under the zoning bylaw is not allowed until allowed under a special permit issued by the Zoning Board of Appeals. So the current question of whether off-site parking is allowed or not allowed is not on the table tonight. If in fact that works between the various abutters at some point in the future, and that parking is needed based on what actually is built in these individual buildings, we'll address that issue when we get to it, based on the condition that member Riley just stated. Third thing may be a bit more of a problem, although as it stands right now, there's more than enough parking at the site, given that we're approving vacant buildings. And that is that there can't be any parking on that access egress roadway. Those, I believe, 21 spaces need to be removed from the plan. Because we have already a preliminary plan before us that is going to use that access way, which is a deeded easement to the abutting property in the rear, is the primary access to a 400,000 square foot, for now, we'll just call it a warehouse. Not exactly what kind of warehouse, but a warehouse. We've already got a conceptual plan in-house for that. You cannot have public parking for uses that is on effectively a street, which in terms of traffic count, that will be a street. We're looking at a traffic count in the range of 1,000 to 1,200 a day, so we can't have backing out traffic into that area, especially since it's a warehouse where there's probably going to be lots of trucks, probably 53-foot trucks. So that has to come off the plan before we'll agree to endorse the plan.
Working with that law, but right now, that is a deeded variance that will have to be altered between me and Ryan. Reported at the registry of deeds, those parkings. And I'm not saying no, we've already talked.
We're simply saying for the purpose of this special permit, they
Okay,
cannot be
all
used.
right.
Yeah, we can't count those spaces when
That's
the
fine.
uses come in.
Yep, but we'll have to change it at the registry of deeds.
Right.
You'll have to work that out with
Yep.
the abutting property
Yep,
owner as to how that's
a
going to work.
non-issue. Yep,
The preference would be to have the roadway as far away as possible from that first building.
Right.
As of right now, there's some parking on the backside, if you will, the south side of that, which wouldn't be appropriate for use,
and a little more.
if that in fact is going to be a building that has some kind of public use within it. As we've discussed in great detail with multiple other town officials, a little leery to issue a special permit for basically a vacant building with no defined finished interiors, because that basically leaves the parking requirement in the whole table for the industrial zone. I do want to stress and make this very clear that the industrial zone does not allow any form of retail uses within it. Okay, the industrial zone has a clearly defined use list. That use list will be what's required under, as was mentioned by Mr. Riley, that section for parking is industrial zone stuff with industrial zone parking and industrial zone uses. Given that, is any other questions, comments, feedback? Anyone else in the room here have any questions about that? Okay, so given that, we have a motion on the table to approve with what I believe are now 11 conditions, which we'll have in final order. We'll get those to you in a draft form so you can look at them
Sure.
probably in just a day or two, Patrick. Then we'll get it
Great.
filed with the town clerk.
That's fantastic, Roy.
All right, give that, and hearing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? So, of the people that are here, that's Gardner, O'Leary, Lawler, Ken, Bates, and Riley in favor. None opposed. I believe that was 6, I believe.
That's correct.
So the final vote recorded is 6 in favor, none opposed. Okay?
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you
right,
very
thank you.
much.
Yes, Dorothy.
Is the applicant for ADGA Realty for the commercial project 126, 130 Franklin Street here?
Yes.
You want your first official act?
Sure.
Make sure I got the right thing, yeah. Oh, that's not the right one. All right, it's this one. All right, so you have that in the first page? So, 1 second, I'll have you read the ad up until the sentence that starts notice published in the Enterprise on Monday. All right, we're going to open a public hearing. This public hearing is for the, we're going to have a quick discussion about who owns what here, but that's, I think, a technical detail at this point, but we're going to open a public hearing for a special permit site plan approval for a commercial building. It's proposed at the intersection of Oak Street and Franklin Street. The current lot addresses are 126 to 130 Franklin Street, which is that corner lot at the traffic light, opposite the gas station that's there right now. We're gonna open the public hearing by having Vice Chairman read the notice of public hearing, which was published in the Brockton Enterprise on Monday, May 24th, 2021, and Monday, May 31st, 2021.
Town of East Bridgewater Planning Board notice of public hearing. The Planning Board of the Town of East Bridgewater will hold a public hearing on Monday, June 7th, 2021, at 7:15 PM in the Town Office Building, 175 Central Street, large conference room, second floor. The purpose of the hearing will be to review a special permit site plan approval submitted by Malden Real Estate Developers, owner applicant, and prepared by Outback Engineering Incorporated. The subject property is located at 126 to 130 Franklin Street and consists of approximately 1.57 acres of land. The zoning district Business 3, B3, and the parcel is shown on East Bridgewater Assessors Map 104, Lot 2, 1412-1410. The Planning Board, pursuant to Section 5H2, special permit allowed uses to allow construction of an office retail building between 6,000 and 15,000 square feet, and Section 13, site plan approval of the Town of East Bridgewater zoning bylaw in Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 11, seeks public input relative to this special permit site plan. The plans are on file with the Planning Building Department and can be reviewed between the hours of 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., Monday through Thursday, and Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 12 noon. Notice published in the Enterprise on Monday, May 24th, 2021, and Monday, May 31st, 2021.
So let's get rid of the technical details first. The application is listed under Malden Real Estate Development, signed as the address owner applicant. We've been advised somewhat informally, but then formally when we actually tracked down the deed for the property at the Registry of Deeds, that the current owner of the property is ADGA Realty LLC.
That's correct. When we initially started this project, it was under Malden, and then we didn't realize it had transferred ownership. It's the same person that owns both entities, it just transferred
All
between.
right, we'll leave that alone. The actual person that owns the entity isn't the key thing. The key thing is the wrong name is on the application, so we need a duplicate of that application file with the correct names and the proper signature on it.
Okay,
All right?
sure thing.
So I think other than that, we're set, because we haven't violated any of the rules of the public hearing or the process at this point, since we haven't voted this, so
Sure.
you're free to start your presentation. I just, for the record, members present, and the reason we do this is, I'm sure you know, this requires a supermajority to issue a special permit. Current members present hearing this during this public hearing of the board, myself, Roy Gardner, Edward O'Leary, John Lawler, Sherry Bates, Robert Ken, and Kevin Riley, who's an associate member. So there's 6 of us sitting tonight who will be eligible to vote on this. So given that, feel free to,
Sure. Matt Groschuttle with Outback Engineering. We're here for a special permit for a site plan approval for a approximately 920 square foot office retail building. As you can see, this is the existing site on the corner of Franklin and Oak Street. There's 3 parcels here. There's an existing two-story residential building, some pavement, a couple wooded areas along the back and along the front. Most of the rest of the property is grass. And, oh.
So if you could do me a favor, could you move that there so people in the room can see it? We actually have the luxury of having copies of all those pages. All that I was asking is, when you flip the pages around when you're talking, just let us know which page you're on, so we can follow in the package we have at the table.
Does that work for everybody?
No, I got the pages.
Okay. So again, just on the first sheet, existing conditions of the site. There's an existing 2-story frame building, some pavement, some wooded areas. Most of the site is cleared and just has lawn and grass. So as part of the development, we're looking to do an office/retail building. On page 2, we have an erosion control and sediment plan. What we're looking to do is have a temporary construction entrance off of Oak Street. We'll leave all the construction and access off of Franklin Street till the very end. So most of the in and out would be off of Oak Street, right on at the existing paved access point that is on Oak Street. We've got an area for refueling of vehicles, temporary construction containment areas for stockpiling, and also a concrete washout pit. The entire site will be surrounded by erosion control barriers until vegetation is established. And we also have a sediment trap. All the temporary disturbance will be directed towards that sediment trap to collect stormwater runoff and reduce any sedimentation off the site. And then as construction progresses, silt sacks and erosion control containments will be installed in the catch basins on site, but prior to that, we'll put some on the existing catch basins along Franklin Street. On sheet 3 shows the utility and drainage plans. All the stormwater runoff from the site will be directed to 3 infiltration areas. We did some test pits and perk tests out there. There's really free draining soils, sandy material. So we have one large infiltration area near the corner of Oak and Franklin Street that'll handle the majority of the paved parking areas and also the runoff from the building itself. There's a proposed septic system that's going to be in the western corner. There's a grassed area, so that's where we'll put the septic system, which will have to be eventually be approved by the Board of Health. We also have 2 smaller infiltration areas, one at the northern end of the property and one at the eastern end. They'll handle a couple smaller areas of the paved parking areas. We also have underground utilities coming off of the utility poles off of Franklin Street, water, both domestic and fire protection coming off the existing water main on Franklin Street. And then we also have, on sheet 4, we have the grading and drainage, or grading of the site. The site's designed to contain the stormwater that is on the paved areas. Like I said, it'll be all graded and contained into the infiltration areas. They're all designed to contain the 100-year storm event, so there shouldn't be any impacts off-site flooding. And also the areas within the paved parking areas are depressed, so if there is any backup or anything, they'll stay within the paved parking areas. We've got parking spaces designed for the retail office space use. Based on the size of the building, we need 55 spaces. We've provided 56, 2 standard handicap accessible parking spaces and 2 van accessible parking spaces. There's a buffer, 10-foot minimum buffer from any parking areas to the adjacent residential areas. There's also going to be the 6-foot stockade fence around the perimeter of the property to neglect any glare from parking to the abutting properties. The circulation of traffic be both from an existing curb cut off Franklin Street and then also the existing access off of Oak Street. We have a parking and loading area designated along the back side of the building. Parking will be, and then we also have the area in the far northwestern corner for the dumpster and recycling areas. Designed so that traffic will be one way around the back side of the building for any vehicles trying to use the spaces or loading areas around the back. And then the rest of the sheet should just be some construction details specific to the site for the stormwater infiltration areas, all the drainage, structure, dumpster pad, and concrete sidewalk details.
All right, so a couple of questions to start with.
Sure.
I think you clearly answered my first question, but that is that your intent is to physically contain all of the stormwater from the site on the site itself?
That's correct. Other than a small swale area around the back to direct some water coming from the western properties that comes onto the site, that'll be diverted around the property. But everything within the paved area, the building, will be all contained on site.
So what's the current status of the stormwater management filing?
We are in the process of compiling that, and based on any feedback that we got from the board, if we had to change our design
Okay.
or anything, we'd be ready to file that.
Have you actually done test pits on the site to determine that the plan as it's currently put together is
Yeah.
viable given the soil conditions?
Yeah, we did perk tests for the leaching field, and then we also did a separate one for the main infiltration area. The soils are all very similar. We can propose to do some confirmatory tests for the other 2 infiltration areas, but I think, based on the stuff we've done so far, we're pretty confident we're going to find the same material.
Okay, so similar to the previous hearing we just had, we've got a situation where we're basically talking about approving for a special permit a vacant building to begin with, right, that you're gonna then fill out depending on who the tenants are. Big difference in this one, this is a B3 zone. So far wider array of what can go in that building, at least theoretically to begin with.
Okay.
So we will have to have some kind of similar condition to a previous condition that Member Riley stated in terms of parking, access, and egress, depending what actually goes in there.
Okay.
Because if half of that building is a restaurant as opposed to 4 or 5 office units, that's a massive difference in terms of parking requirements.
Okay. Everything is based off of retail. I mean, the office is a little bit less restrictive, but we went with a more restrictive to gain the parking and size of septic.
Oh, retail, in the retail category in business, restaurant falls into that category, so just to keep in mind that we will need some kind of further filing when you actually determine what those uses are, to make sure they actually fit whatever capacity remains at the site, primarily for parking.
Okay.
Because there are some uses where the parking shown in this plan is not adequate. If you look at the parking table in the zoning bylaw, there's multiple things allowed in the B3 district
Okay.
that, depending on the square footage of those, would use all of that parking plus,
Okay.
all right? So just
So
be
that
aware
would
of
be
that.
something where, when we go to pull the building permit, we would have to make sure that we have enough parking.
What's that?
When we go to pull the building permit, we would have to make sure that we have enough parking.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think what Member Riley stated is that you have to come back to the planning board with a notice of what you're gonna use it for. We'll verify that that works, and we'll notify the building inspector. So far, we're okay. We haven't run out of parking yet. Otherwise, we can't grant the permit.
Sure, no, I understand.
But technically speaking, we're supposed to be granting the special permit for a defined use. We understand getting the defined use prior to having a building to use these days is tough to do with multiple towns allowing basically vacant buildings that are unfinished interior to go up along business zones,
Okay,
and then come back later to fill them out.
no, I understand.
We've had, let's just say, in past, been burned multiple times with that. We're not gonna let that happen in the future. All right, any other questions, comments from members of the board?
Matt,
Mr. Riley?
do we have any sort of a thought at this point on uses, beyond sort of just a general description?
No, I mean, it was kind of fluid in between, you know, office space and retail. I don't think we were thinking restaurant, until you kind of brought that up, but I don't think restaurant was what they were thinking, maybe a bank, something like that.
Would the applicant agree to a condition which takes H3 to JK and L out of play? If you know what those are, I'll give you a gold star.
I don't have that in front of me, sorry.
Adult entertainment.
I never really broached that to them, but I can confirm, I can try to confirm that with them. That was-
Question as to whether it would be something they would voluntarily agree to.
Which sections again was that?
It's H3 to JKL.
I can follow up with them and
Yep, thank you.
confirm.
Anyone else up here have any questions? The only comment I would make at first blush, given the fact that this is gonna be, if you will, a virgin site when you start working, it would be much better if the entrance and exits on both of those were at the actual ends of the property, as far away from that traffic light as you can get them. I don't see any real reason why, if you're gonna start design, not to do that.
We were trying to take advantage of the existing curb cuts that are already there.
I kind of figured that, but given the fact that those were residential curb cuts for houses, and that this is gonna be generating business traffic, it would leave a far better defined traffic flow, especially in the front of the building facing Franklin Street, where people wouldn't be coming in and going left or right, depending on which end of the building they're going to. They'd enter at the end and always be going left to get, you know.
Yeah, I guess we could look at that.
Think about that,
State approval? State approval for changing those curb cuts?
I don't believe they're state-owned.
I don't believe they're state
highways.
roadways.
Oh, okay, I'm just thinking we're
They're
14
just town roadways.
14 and,
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
town road.
yeah, okay.
They're routes, but they're just town routes, they're not state routes.
Okay.
All right, anything else here on the board? How many members would like to ask questions? We need to have a name and address. I'm sorry.
One, you were just talking about the access off Franklin Street in particular?
Primarily, that's the biggest one, because that's the one in the front of the building that's probably going to carry the most traffic. The other one is kind of in an awkward location, given
Yeah.
the orientation of the building, but
Okay.
I'm sorry, it's Patrick, I think, right?
Patrick Lynch, 136 Franklin Street, in the northern abutter. One of the concerns I had dealt with the location of the technical term was, excuse me, sir, what do you refer to this as?
That's a underground infiltration area, stormwater infiltration area.
The underground infiltration area abuts my leaching field. which is right, which is actually shown on the sketch on page, sheet 3. I'm concerned that, in my, it's not, so to the west of that sketch from my existing is my, alternative, leaching field. And I'm concerned that with this leaching field, you will, saturate my, leaching field. And I would like to see it possibly move to another location, possibly to the east of the, along the Franklin Street side. That way, any leaching would not be directed towards my leaching field.
Where's your septic system gonna go for the new building?
We're down in the, I guess, the southwestern corner, right just north of the entrance access off Oak Street. It should be shown
Okay, I got it.
on page 3.
So is there any reason that stormwater infiltration area number 1 couldn't be slid around to the front of the building and area number 2 slid down a little bit further? So it's not directly abutting that property line?
I mean, we're pretty far off the property line. We're, probably close to 20 feet off the property line where that infiltration area is. The proposed pavement's at least 10 feet. We got another 5 or 6 feet from there, so, we've got plenty of distance from the property line.
Okay.
The issue is trying to squeeze it in, keeping it away from the building, keeping it away from the property line. There's only so many areas we can put this in.
All right, we'll take that under advisement. Anyone else here have a... Yes, I need a name and address.
Karen Lynch, 136 Franklin Street. There was a second concern that we had with respect to the plan. We wanted to be sure that they were aware that there's a gas line that comes in, we have an easement. A gas line comes in through Oak Street. It runs, the dwelling that's currently there, 130 Franklin Street, was also serviced by gas. And it runs in along to the west side of that house. So if you were looking at the house in real life, you'd be looking at a garage. It would be to the left of the garage. So we didn't see any notice of that on the plans when we looked at it. We have been in touch with the gas company and Plymouth County as well, Plymouth County Registry of Deeds.
So there's a gas line there that runs across private property?
We have an easement. The owner of the 130 Franklin Street was my brother-in-law. And when we built the home in 1985, he granted us an easement to have gas come in. There's no gas on our end of Franklin Street. There is at the other end, at the Whitman end of Franklin Street, but not at the East Bridgewater end of Franklin Street.
So the gas line goes all the way from Oak Street all the way down to 136?
It goes by the house. It goes on the west side of the current house at 130, and then through our backyard, side yard, over to our home. From Oak Street.
The line was intended originally to service 130 Franklin Street. And we had attached our feed from the end of his line going into my backyard for approximately a distance of totally of 60 feet. So
Who actually put the line in?
the gas company.
All the way to 136?
Bay State Gas at
The
the time.
gas company put it into 130 originally. And when I built my house, they allowed us to continue their gas line into my backyard for approximately a distance of about 50 feet. 50 to 60 feet approximately.
So given that, I'm assuming that the gas company has the engineering details of where that line is?
They've served a couple of times. One of the problems that occurred is the gas company has changed names a couple of times since that was put in. We have just found out about this proposal last week. And instead of calling the gas companies, we have been directed to the office of Brockton, who in turn contacted the person who handled it originally. He's up in the North Shore. We're waiting for him to get back to us with comments. We're trying to find out, did he file the proper paperwork? We contacted the Registry of Deeds, and they said, they weren't able to locate it. It says, call the gas company. They can tell you how it was filed. And I do know that the owner,
So you've got a private service gas line right through, diagonally through the middle of that property?
It's
well,
news to me, but I'll
So
look into it.
that's an interfamily situation, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
the one that goes through
It was,
the bulk
yeah.
of his property was actually the owner of the land prior to the
So
purchasing.
the easement would be to get the gas to 130?
136.
136.
From our property.
Well, should be an easement.
Interim, it was the-
There should be an easement on file to get it to 130, to house 130.
Yes.
And then, as you say, then there should be something that would extend it over from 130 to 136. But yeah, you're right. I mean, you got a private service gas line, yeah, that's,
Which the gas company, in their written legal documents, say don't allow.
right, right. So, I mean, easy
Gas
enough.
service is only legally allowed by the gas company through legal frontage on a street onto the property where the gas service exists.
Yeah.
That's right in their own legal documents.
They handled it entirely. We did not interfere with them as far as how they did it. They said it could be done. And the issue comes now is, I don't know if they filed the proper paperwork. I'm trying to locate the proper paperwork.
So in theory, then there's
It's been in
no
existence since 1980.
other way to get gas there,
1985.
right? Based on what we're
Yeah,
hearing.
because there's no gas on Franklin
Right.
Street in East Bridgewater.
Right. Wow.
Well, my only comment to that is first of all, you'd have to find the deeded easements between those properties and make sure those easements are actually worded correctly.
The easement that brings as far as 130, which existed prior, if we can find that one.
Well, that doesn't take you to 136, though.
Not
It
bring
should
it
be
to
two different
136.
things.
Now, the question is, when you're gonna deal with the gas company, how they rectify the fact they did not do it properly. We gave them the documentation.
Were you planning on using gas at this site?
Don't think so. No. I'm not sure if we were even allowed to.
Of course not, Roy. Yikes.
I will take that one under advisement too. That's a major issue.
And by the
The
way,
gas company will tell you legally, and has actually sent me documents on something that I did for my church, that they will not do that and haven't done that for 40 years.
I do know when they did the pressure testing, they did test those lines.
If it's there, they have to test it.
2 years ago, and they went from.
If there's a meter on your property, they're required under state law to test the lines.
They physically did test them 2 years ago. They followed the line up to, tied in on 130,
What-
right out to Oak Street.
When did gas come into 130?
When the house was built, I don't know what year it was.
In the late 70s,
When did gas come into 136?
1985.
So late 70s and mid 80s.
Yeah, they're actually prohibited under state law from doing that now, and that's been for quite a while, so.
True, yeah.
I'm not sure how we address that at this point. We'll have to
No, I
take
just
that
wanted
under
to bring it
advisement.
to your attention.
That's a problem.
That's a good thing to bring to their attention.
I wonder if when DigSafe gets notified, they'd note that, they'd find it.
DigSafe does periodically stake it for us when we saw activity going on at 130. They came down and staked it.
So apparently DigSafe can find it. Well, they have to be able to find it because the equipment they use is pretty. But obviously, it's somewhere in the middle of all that, where there's lots of excavating going on and things in the ground, so.
Roy, is 136 the immediately abutting property that would see at the north end of this plan?
It was actually, 136 was like the third house down. There was one in the corner, one next to it, and then 136 is the third one. Originally.
Originally, it was all one lot, it gets subdivided, that was part of the problem.
So it'll be one bump down from, one bump down from that lot.
The tap would actually be coming off of Oak Street.
Presumably through that driveway? That's interesting.
Okay, let's move on. Anyone else here in the room? Yes.
David Horton, son-in-law, Matt Karen, registered civil PE. I just want to go back to the infiltration system. Again, because the whole lot is going to be elevated about 2 feet, it looks like, then we do have concerns about moving that northern infiltration system. Apart from the gas line issue, we were going to request that it be moved either to the east or west. That's a heavily treed, full mature trees right there in that area, the northern portion of the lot. So all the rainfall, clearing that and all that rain's gonna come down, and they have a 1985 system that we don't wanna see overwhelmed. So we were gonna ask if there's anything that the engineer could do, either enlarge one of the infiltration banks on the right or the left, and try to limit that along the northern edge.
And we can take a look at it.
All right, thank you.
At first blush, the most obvious thing would be increase the size of infiltration area number 2, but that's independent of the test pits that we don't know what the test pits look like, so that might not be viable alternative, but that's the most obvious thing looking at the plan.
Yeah,
At least from the
it'll
surface.
involve regrading and a bunch of other things too, but
Yeah,
we can look at it.
okay. Anyone else? Yes.
Jennifer Horton, 246 West Street, daughter of 136 Franklin Street. Just a question, to clarify, nothing will be voted upon until a defined use has been presented before the board, is that correct?
No, that's actually not correct.
Okay, can you explain?
We will probably grant a special permit similar to what we did in the previous public hearing.
Okay,
And note that prior to issuance of a building permit, the applicant will have to come back, tell us what the allowed use is, we'll review the parking for that allowed use and make sure that it fits on the site. My expectation, based on what's been happening and what the previous applicant has indicated he wants to do, he's gonna build a vacant building. That building's gonna be there, he's gonna have a full rent, full lease, whatever, for sale, I don't know, something. And at the time they decide what they're gonna do with it, whether it be part of it or all 10,000 square feet, then they're gonna come back to us and say, we've got the use. Then we'll have to make a determination if that use fits the parking that's there. If the parking that's there does not fit that use, then we're not gonna allow them to finish the interior of the building for that use. That's the risk they take when they do it this way.
thank you.
Anything else? Back to the board, any further questions, comments?
I would just note that only thing I'm seeing here with Bay State Gas at that location is a financing statement that was filed way back when probably a gas water heater was installed there. But let's see if there's anything else here.
I mean, there's 2 key steps here. One, the biggest key step is that we actually see easements from the prior owner of what would it have been, 130, which would have been the first house, to the adjacent house, and then easements to the third house. And that those easements are recorded so they're in perpetuity to the abutters and not just to each family member. Because if those easements aren't written correctly, those easements don't transfer to the current owner of that property, which is ADGA Realty LLC at this point. So we need to actually see copies of those easements so we can get advice as to whether or not ADJ Realty has to honor those easements for the gas line.
Yeah, I mean, as I'm saying.
That's a legal issue. We're not gonna answer that here.
Just looking quickly at the Registry of Deeds website, there's nothing that would suggest that there's an easement. Not to say it's a definitive search, but
All right, so I basically here, I think we've got three issues that everyone needs to understand. Number one, they're gonna build unless something happens very quickly and they get a tenant before they start building, they're gonna basically build an empty shell building to lease, rent, whatever, sell, depending on, it's a capital investment, if whatever the right offer is. If the right offer is somebody wants to buy it, it'll get sold, guaranteed. But how it gets fleshed out and finished, when it's time to do that, we'll have to come back to the planning board, and the planning board will review that in conjunction with the zoning enforcement officer, who is also our building inspector, to make sure that he's comfortable that whatever that use is, the parking there is adequate. In addition to that, we want to look at obviously the gas line issue, the infiltration basin situation, and the potential, if reasonable, since the town is going to be granting the curb cut anyway, to see if it would be possible to get that curb cut on Franklin Street in the northern boundary of the property, if you will, to facilitate the incoming and outgoing traffic so they're not turning against each other if they're coming in, going left and right, trying to go out left and right. It would make traffic flow a lot cleaner on that site, I think. Okay?
Sure.
So given that, I don't think there's any reason to keep the public hearing open any further. So I think at this point, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Okay. So we've got a motion, O'Leary. Do we have a second? Second, Lawler? Yep. To close the public hearing. We'll consider the public hearing closure motion being made at 7:55. All those in favor of the motion to close the public hearing, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? We'll show that as all 6 in favor, none opposed. Thank you all. Thank you.
yeah, like, yeah.
That's what we said. Try to get up there. On a 40-foot easement to get gas to that little red house up on the common. That little red ridge, they have gas with the condos next to it.
July 5th is going to be the
40
4th
feet.
of July hall.
No, you can't enter a property line except through the public way.
July
I
5th.
said that's always been their laws, their rules.
June,
Dictated by the state, I
June
think.
21st is our next meeting.
So just a continuance date,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Sorry, Kevin.
Can we move on to,
We, just not to interrupt, but Roy, but just a continuance date on that?
we didn't continue it, we closed it.
Okay, so they're gonna come back with other information.
Yeah, they're gonna come back with specific issues addressed that we raised tonight.
On no specific date?
As soon as they have them, they can bring them back to us.
Okay.
I mean, there was no real open issues for major redesigns. The only question is slightly
Right. Yeah,
movement
no,
of that basin and identifying the gas line issue. All right, let's move down to MJL Construction, Southridge Drive. It's a residential 5-lot subdivision. The public hearing was closed on 5/3. I think based on the fact that all of the stormwater management as well as the wetlands issues are currently with Conservation Commission, that from a planning board standpoint, I believe we're ready to approve that with our standard conditions for subdivision approval.
Yeah, I mean, the only question relating to that stuff was raised by the consultant was on the waiver for the setback from Northridge Drive. And, you know, as you all well know, we only have one access point to the property, Northridge Drive exists, so we can't do anything to change that.
Yep.
And then he also raised a question about the waiver on the depth of cover to that one drain pipe at Station 9+25. asking the question of bounds, those bounds are temporary for the temporary cul-de-sac. So it's also possible that those bounds may never even get installed if things stay good and the project continues to the second phase. So those are the only two things I could really speak to are just those two waivers.
So I did have one question related to that after I had seen those comments, and is there any reason in that, and I'm looking at sheet 3 of the set?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any reason why where that roadway intersects out at Captain's Way, it can't intersect right at the actual radius of the curve itself? So that you have clear sight lines in both directions all the way up both roads?
Oh, you're gonna make me take my pants off, aren't you?
Sheet 3, Patrick, where the roadway intersects Captain's Way,
Yep,
you've kind of got it bisecting what at one point was a lot?
yes.
Parcel A, parcel B. Is there any reason why that can't be moved down so that as you look at that plan, the bottom radius is right on the property line?
On the property corner with the abutting lot and then
So
coming in?
that would make that intersection almost a pure 90-degree intersection with distance sight clearly directly up the center line of Captain's Way in both directions?
Yeah, I think we actually looked at that at one point, Roy, and
Sure.
we were just looking at the multiple jogs going in that would create the multiple curve points. And also the access in from, it would be good from the western side coming up Captain's Way, but not so good coming down Captain's Way off the corner than having to make a snap corner into that access point. So we did kind of look at that originally, and it just didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I don't see any issue with the waiver on the cover over the pipe. I think it's already been demonstrated that the type of pipe is suitable for granting of that waiver, so. Anyone else have any questions, comments? Okay, I think then, given that, I think we could entertain a motion to approve that subdivision.
Move to approve the subdivision.
So that's a motion, O'Leary.
Second.
Second, Lawler. Further discussion? For the purpose of that approval, Patrick, I'm going to say we're going to approve it with our standard 12 conditions and grant the 2 requested waivers per the information from the stormwater review guys. That will make 14 final conditions. We'll get that list of conditions to you pretty quickly in the next day or two.
Sure.
Any further discussion on the motion? And again, just for clarity, this is the Tower Heights Phase 5 off Captain's Way. As it currently stands, it's a 5-lot, single-family residential subdivision. The intent is to extend that for, I'm guessing, either 5 or 6 more house lots beyond that, depending on how they fit when you're all done.
Yeah, I mean, we had shown you that in the preliminary process, the conceptual build-out of the rest of that property.
Yeah. Okay? Further discussion here on the board? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Not voting.
So that's 5 of us in favor. So that's 5 in favor, none opposed, with Associate Member Kevin Riley abstaining. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, let's run through the other pending matters here, and we'll move back to the business of things of minutes and bills in a bit. So, we had a proposed residential subdivision off of Oak Street which was the property identified as 80 Oak Street. Applicant was Robert D. Graham. At this point in time, we've received a letter requesting to withdraw his definitive subdivision plan without prejudice. The plan is at some point, they're probably going to come back with a one-lot subdivision, which is kind of down the road a bit. We also have on the table in front of me tonight a proposed Form A plan, which would cut off the land for the one-lot subdivision and separate it from the, what would be then the then remaining house lot at 80 Oak Street, which would get its frontage off its existing frontage on Oak Street. I can't legally endorse that Form A plan until such time as the subdivision proposal before us is withdrawn by a vote of the planning board, so I would request at this point that we officially vote to accept a letter that was recorded at the town clerk's office 21 May, I'm sorry, she uses the backward date, May 24th, 2021. And that's a letter from Michael Koska, who's in front of us right now, but that's the letter to withdraw the ongoing subdivision in front of us. So if I can entertain a motion to accept that letter of withdrawal.
I'll make the motion.
So we got a motion, Lawler, second Ken. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor of the motion to accept the letter of withdrawal for the subdivision without prejudice, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And we'll show that as 5 in favor, none opposed, with Associate Member Kevin Riley abstaining. So I do have the Form A plan, which I will sign after the meeting tonight. It's clearly a pure Form A that leaves the remaining land eligible for a potential one-lot subdivision. I will note, though, I think we did discuss this, that you're actually about 5,000 square foot short of being able to get an estate lot there, if I remember correctly.
After many discussions that Mr. Morris had with Mr. Graham, it was decided upon that it was much more important to do a one-lot subdivision as opposed to subdividing the front.
Okay, that's fine.
And as far as, Mr. Chairman, down the road, I'm already down the road right here.
That's fine.
If you would accept what I have, I do have checks, application form, copies of the plan, and,
The Form A
abutters
plan.
list of the one-lot
Oh,
subdivision.
for the well, you can drop that off down at the office tonight if you wish to do that.
Thank you.
I just, as I stated, and I think I talked to you about this previously, we can't accept that one until the other one's withdrawn, so, okay. And I will take care of endorsing the Form A plan, because I can now endorse that with the other proposal withdrawn.
Thank
So
you,
that
Mr.
shouldn't be any problem. Okay. All right, so, so for right now, I think we're all set at 80 Oak Street. I would like to entertain a motion to endorse the Form A plan to separate the 80 Oak Street residential lot from the remaining land, which will be the site of a potential future development. We'll leave it at that. I've already looked at the Form A plan. The Form A plan clearly meets all of our requirements for a Form A plan, so. And that simply means that it doesn't actually require approval by the planning board. Chairman has authorized a single signature to sign that and give it back to the applicant. It means that the house lot that's there has the minimum frontage and meets all of the zoning requirements for an existing lot. There will be a parcel remaining, which for now has a note on it that has to stay in common ownership with 80 Oak Street until some other further action takes place. Okay? So can we have a motion to that effect?
I'll make the motion.
So we've got a motion, Lawler. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, O'Leary, to authorize endorsement of the Form A plan for the applicant at 80 Oak Street, Robert D. Graham. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We'll show that as a 5 in favor, none opposed, with Associate Member Kevin Riley abstaining. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
All right, So we took care of both of the 80 Oak Street things at the same time, basically, so. We've got a Form A plan for, what's referred to here as 3 Isaac Sprague Road. I think for the record is we've already assigned the Pond Street address for that.
Yes, and it's on the plan.
So in our new folder that we create for that, it will be listed as Pond Street with a Pond Street address. So for the board's benefit, this is another Form A plan. This is actually, was a one-lot subdivision approved some 20-plus years ago. They're making some minor changes to the roadway layout in terms of what they're gonna pave and some grading corrections, as I understand it, in the roadway. This is basically a backlot off of Pond Street up in the area of Osamoquin Pines. The lot has existed on paper now for, as I said, for some 20-plus years, so the Form A plan does not create a new lot. It's the existing lot that was already there. That was approved under subdivision control as a one-lot subdivision. Roadway has to be maintained in common private ownership with whoever owns the house that's on that lot. So the Form A plan basically simply allows them to construct the roadway slightly differently than was on the original subdivision plan, so we can entertain a motion to endorse the plan. I'll get the right address. For 721 Pond Street. So we've got a motion, Lawler. Second, Ken. Further discussion on the motion? Again, for the record, this doesn't create a new lot under subdivision control. This simply acknowledges that there's an existing lot that has already met the requirements under subdivision control. So, all those in favor of the motion, say aye. All those opposed? Again, we'll show that as 5 in favor, none opposed, with Associate Member O'Reilly abstaining. All right, 60 Franklin Street.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry. Yes, Mr. Morris.
I'm just following up on that
Can I
one.
have your name, please?
I'm sorry, Milton Morris, 27 Central Street. Just following up on that one, I did submit a letter just asking for a request on the release of covenant from the old thing. So I have Lynn Macaroon.
Yeah, no issue there. I understood, so I'll cover that right now. So when that subdivision was originally approved, there was a covenant signed and recorded. Probably shouldn't have been, since there was never any intention for that roadway to become into public ownership. So we've had some discussions back and forth between multiple parties here. So I think the way we want to do that is we want to vote to release the covenant with a stipulation as part of the vote to release the covenant that prior to issuance of an occupancy permit for that site, that the building inspector must confirm that the roadway has been physically constructed and is paved. Because we can't have a house 200, 300 feet back that doesn't have a paved roadway to it. So if we can entertain a motion to release the covenant for, I'll forget the address already, was it 751?
721.
721 Pond Street, with the condition that prior to issuance of the occupancy permit for that single-family home or for the residential home that's going to be built there, that the building inspector confirm with the planning board that the driveway / private roadway has been physically paved so that the site is accessible by emergency vehicles over a paved way. So that's a motion. Bates, do we have a second to that motion? Second, Lawler. Any further discussion on that motion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And again, we'll show that as 5 in favor, none opposed, with Associate Member Kevin Riley abstaining.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for reminding me of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So we don't have an as-built for Franklin Street yet, is that my understanding
Yes,
why
you
that's
do.
on here?
Yes, it's there,
Oh, it is there?
yes. That's what I submitted, was the as-built for Franklin Street.
All right, I need to review that in some detail prior to our next meeting so that we can officially accept that. I haven't had a chance to go over that in any detail, so.
Right. Also, right before we leave tonight, we'll need to look, if you look at the paperwork, I drafted up a covenant for this one that they were just talking about. Because the previous covenant is Harmon's Way. So I just want to make sure what you do is correct.
Release?
I can talk with you about that tomorrow.
Okay, but just signatures and stuff, because all the board members need to sign it, right? The release? And we can do that at our next meeting as well.
Yeah, let's plan on doing that at our next meeting. Because we need more words in here than is here, I think.
Yes, I agree.
We want to get the old name, we want to put the new address and name on here, and then something in parentheses like formerly. The name isn't Isaac Sprague either. The name is prior to that at the registry, right?
I'm sorry?
The name on the original covenant is not Isaac Sprague either, right?
No, it's Harmon,
It's a second generation back.
yes.
So we want to reference that in the originally referred to as Harmon Way and recorded at the Registry of Deeds with that book and page. But we want to list the current address that we've assigned based on our agreement with the public safety guys at the fire department with Craig. Okay.
I have it for copies of that covenant.
No, I just.
Okay, 427 North Bedford Street, site plan. Okay. Okay,
Evening.
I assume this is you, right?
This is me, Greg Higa.
Okay, Craig. So a couple of issues I noted about this when we were reviewing the parking requirements with the building inspector. So based on the way I read this, and I've only got a small copy of the plan, but I believe I'm reading the numbers right, that you've got the spaces 18 feet instead of 19 feet.
Yes.
No, that's pretty much what I got, I think. Well, it's a little bit bigger. But a bigger problem I see is that the zoning bylaw also requires, as part of the site plan approval, to show that where the property abuts an existing residentially used property, that it have a 10-foot buffer zone.
The original ZBA public hearing for the sideline relief, there was an agreement in there with the neighbors, and that parking area was on the plan. And I have an agreement that's recorded that I'm gonna put up permanent screening on both sides, fences to be agreed upon mutually between the abutters, like if they want a green fence or a blue fence. So when those parking spaces were on that plan at that public hearing, that's the way they ended up with being there.
Okay, so I think for the purposes of the planning board site plan review, we'll need to have copies of all of those agreements in our file.
Okay. That was, recorded to the deed, those things I'd have to, didn't I have to, sorry, did I have to submit that when I was doing this? I had to give that deed, it's been a while, this
It has been a
Corona
while.
baloney dragged this on way
Yeah,
too
no,
long.
understood.
But I know I have that stuff. And in the book, I kind of read it as, you're correct about the residential with the 10-foot buffer zone, but I don't know, you correct me if I'm wrong, if you can point out the way it's worded, that that's a business area now, so that house is in a business area, that's why.
Use.
Well, I understand, but.
Use,
just to-
not zone.
Right. But
The way that was originally worded when we decided to rezone that area business is we wanted to try and protect those residents whose lots weren't big enough to become businesses, which
Right.
this is one actually, but
Right.
we're past that at
No,
this
I
point.
understand that.
We're past that at this point, so, and the intent was to try and protect those people that wanted to stay there long-term,
I
all longer
understand.
term, and couldn't get a reasonable price for their property otherwise, so. So we'll need those agreements, and in reality, the references for those agreements and book and page numbers where they're recorded ought to be on this plan. So that when somebody later on down the road asks, how did that happen?
What, the
have a way-
spaces being there, how did that happen?
Yeah.
That's what you want, the
So
reference
we need
to
the
that.
reference book and pages for the agreements for either a butter on either side. That I think we just had to record.
Oh, you mean their book and page that they agreed to this?
Yeah, because I thought what I just heard you say is that there's a document recorded with a book and page saying that
Well,
the butters
I
had
don't
agreed
know
at
if
the
the book
screening.
and page thing, but,
It's recorded, there's a book and page.
okay, Mr. Travis was there at that public hearing, and I don't know the name of the people next door, and they had concern about headlights and all this stuff, and the parking spaces were on that variance request. So I agreed to put up a fence or landscaping shrubs in the front entranceway to keep that from bothering them. And it was in the decision, so I'll have to get that.
Well, that's actually enumerated in the decision from ZBA?
Excuse me?
It's actually enumerated in the decision from
It's
ZBA?
part of the decision
Okay.
was the fence agreement, because that parking was on that
Okay.
public hearing plan.
Okay. So maybe in that case, the only reference we need on this sheet is a ZBA document recording book and page number.
Book 51865, page 257.
Say that again, Kevin?
51, sorry, wait a minute, hang on, one second. 52317, 312, looking at the wrong reference.
5-2,
52317, page 312. And that was recorded on 2/6 of 2020.
I think you might be talking one of the conditions. I don't know if it's on one of the conditions for the fence.
Let's look.
okay. All right, so I think probably all we need to do is just get the reference, that somewhere just noted on here that this is subject to the variance that was granted on whatever date that was and recorded at the Registry of Deeds on book 52317, page 312. And we'll get a copy of that just to verify that that's the right document. I'm sure it is.
Just for the board's information, condition 3, mutually agreed upon reasonable screening between abutters on either side of the property with a minimum of 6 feet height. If parties cannot come to a mutual agreement, they can readdress this issue with the board.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay, so I guess that thing's covered, so. So is this the actual plan that ZBA granted the variances on?
No, now, the actual plan, once it went through conservation,
got squeezed and squished in a few different areas, a foot here, 2 feet there. The building actually had to become a little shorter, and the septic tanks got moved out of the parking lot to behind the building. And I think on the original plan, there was a couple of more parking spaces that, because of stormwater management and roof drains and all that stuff, had to be adjusted downward a little bit.
All right, was the parking that's shown here opposite each other with 18-foot spaces with a 24-foot travel way?
Correct.
Was that on the original ZBA plan?
No, the original ZBA plan showed those 19 feet, I believe. If you look at that other plan, I'm sure it's small, but that's what I believe. And the building was actually, I want to say maybe 14 feet longer in that original hearing. Now it's down to 186. I think it was 200 in the beginning.
So is the building wider than it was?
The building is wider than it was because it was a trade-off to move the septic system to the back and take the length off the building and try to get some of the the use back, making it wider. That's what caused those spaces to be smaller, I believe.
So at the time that variances were granted for the plan, they were shown as 19 feet.
I believe so.
So Dot, we'll need to see a copy of the actual plan that the ZBA acted on.
If I have one, it's probably the same little one that you have. I don't know if I have it. Oh, when I click the one. I don't think I have it. No.
So we're gonna have to review that a little bit to, because the planning board's not authorized to waive that depth. That's a zoning bylaw number. That's been the standard number since '87. So let's put this on our agenda for the next meeting.
19th?
I think it's the 19th.
So let's figure that out right now.
Move to continue this matter till the hearing.
Let's wait just 1 second
Well,
before we do
sure.
that.
Yeah, can I, well, ask,
Sorry?
can I have you look at the rest of this stuff, or is that gonna stop it right here?
Well, I think,
You know, and if the worst-case scenario for me is adjusting that building back 2 feet and resubmitting that, if that's what's gonna help this move forward, then I have no problem doing that.
so my individual opinion is you probably need to do that because the building size should,
That's fine with me, I guess I'll have to.
I mean, the
address that.
variances were basically granted almost exclusively because the lot's narrow.
Right, I understand that too, yes.
So by changing the layout,
No, and honestly, I mean, I was involved with this every inch of the way, and that's one thing that it got by me, to see that it got shrunk to 18, but because it's like an industry standard,
9 by 18 is an industry standard. The town of East Bridgewater still has 10 by 19. You all might find it very surprising to go around town with a measuring tape and find a space that's 10 feet wide. Out
supposed-
front, there's nothing 10
It's supposed to
feet
be
wide.
10 by 19.
No, I know, but like even out here, there's nothing 10 feet wide out here. They're all under 9. I have a map I drew just to show you, not to make
I'm
a
not-
big stink
yeah, I'm
over
not
it, but
gonna-
it's
I
like
won't-
when
I
it
won't
came
dispute
across
that.
me like that, I'm like, I didn't know. I understand it's like a zoning violation now,
So what was proposed to the Board of Appeals was a 42 by 180 building with a 10-foot setback.
It was 42 by 180?
Yep.
Okay, and now it's 42 by 180, and now it's 40 by 186. So I stand corrected about it being smaller. I meant, I guess, smaller the other direction. And why it got 2 feet taken off instead of 4 feet now is a question for scratching my head, I guess.
Mr. Chairman, the vote specifically is to allow a variance to allow demolition of the existing building and construct a new 42 by 180 commercial building that would come no closer than 10 feet from the side yard setback. And there was a foundation plan that was presented, so, I think,
Yeah, well, it's still shown in the plan I'm looking at is the setback to the rear of the building is exactly 10 feet.
Yes, that's not changed.
Right,
It was
the
the
building
parking
didn't-
lot side that got changed. They revised it back to 40, maybe it should have been revised back to 38 based on that, but kind of what I got from this is the mistake was made as a reference to the industry standard of 918, and it's his mistake, and then he made a reference on a legend somewhere that it was like a variance for the parking space, but it was too late, I guess,
Yeah, because the variance was already,
No, I understand,
It's done at that
100%,
yeah, it's noted on the plan that there was a variance, but there's,
Yeah.
that's not any part of what was granted.
well, they need to be 10 feet wide and 19 feet deep. That's what we've always required since we revised the zoning bylaw back in 87.
No, I understand.
We could potentially look in the future as if they really are changing parking lot requirements, but, all right. Want to discuss this now before we get further, so we decide when we're going to bring this up again, but
So Roy, what's the dimension of the building? I can't see it. Is it 40 by 186?
Correct.
yes,
Okay, well,
186 feet long, 40 feet wide.
I think he's got an issue with the ZBA, because they have a specific 42 by 180. That's what they varied it to permit that construction.
Is that what they have?
They have.
Right, because I said that once it went to drainage, stormwater, all that, it got adjusted back. I don't know how and why, but it did. The parking spaces actually on the original plan are less on this plan. There's less spaces. There's actually more spaces on the original plan that were 10 by 19.
Well, because there was some behind the building too, I think.
No, there was no spaces behind the building ever. They were all in that parking lot. But I think on the residence side, they went further back, but where that turned into water outlets and overflows into the easement
okay.
and all that, it squashed it forward.
So the spaces that were there previously are in those two areas that look like one's marked drainage easement and
Yeah, the ones all along the front of the building, I don't think those changed. The ones on the other side, there's less now.
because they were a mirror image of what's in front of the building.
I think it was mirrored. It was the same on front and back, and now it's like a loss of, I don't know, 8 maybe, 6? I'm not sure.
So before we decide which meeting we have another meeting this month, right? All right, so
19th.
what is the date of the next June meeting?
19,
The 20,
no? Were you telling me stories? No, you were.
21st.
21st, okay.
So let's continue this till the 21st and make sure we have all of the paperwork on the table so we can sort out what we've got here so that we can, as close as possible, comply with the plans that the variance was based on to begin with, and figure out how much parking we've got here. We have a similar issue here that we had for those previous two buildings.
No, I heard that, and I'm understanding it 100%.
I mean, I would think that, you know, this, you could certainly approve a building that's smaller in its width, but I don't know how you approve a building that's longer in its length than what was approved by the ZBA.
But
Let's-
that
let's-
can get adjusted back if that's the only obstacle course.
Yeah,
But
I mean, just so that everybody's on the
control of
same.
doing this, and whatever it takes to move it on. And you can all understand, I hope, it's like a snowstorm to try to navigate all these things, you know? And the coronavirus didn't help any with meetings on Zoom, and so I can see getting lost a few feet here and there. How it happened, I don't really know. I wasn't like, all right, let's make it a little bigger.
No,
Let's
no.
look at, had nothing to do with that.
So let's take all that stuff under advisement. If necessary, we can effectively revert to the ZBA plan with whatever changes had to be made to the parking to accommodate the drainage as part of stormwater management.
To continue the matter to June 19th at 7:05 PM.
21st.
21st, excuse me, I'm still going on Saturday. Got nothing better to do Saturdays.
Okay, so we've got a motion, Robert,
21st.
do you have a second?
7:05.
Second, Ken, I think I heard Rob first, so. Okay. Second, Ken, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We'll show that as a, yeah, technically, this isn't under either subdivision control or special permit, so Mr. Riley can act on that based on prior advice from town council. So we'll show that as 6 in favor, none opposed. Thank you all. Thanks.
Okay, so just
Should
for
be able to
my
resolve this.
own knowledge to further on with this, I gotta look into these things that I can ask her about.
We'll get copies directly from the office of all of that paperwork.
Okay, and
sit
then
down and
it will
figure
go
out.
on further to the building and the square footage, the usage and all that stuff to,
Yeah, because I'm expecting, based on what I've heard, I don't officially know, but that as you build these out, you're gonna go to the building inspector for individual building permits for the
well,
units?
no, and, you know, when I submitted all that stuff to that review board, it was like a guinea pig thing, because I was gonna bring it here anyways, and I was in negotiations with someone, so now 51% of that building is gonna be a doctor's office. And that's a solid contract already in agreement, so
Okay.
that, you know, doctor's office with 8 employees, so I was already working on the parking space requirements that way. This isn't just a speculation situation
Okay.
now, you know?
All
And
right.
there was a plan I gave of the buildings, the architectural design buildings. It's not that metal building that I was gonna do originally as a spec. This has turned into something else.
Okay. So it's gonna look more like this
Yeah.
guy?
That's the May plan from this year?
Exactly,
Yeah.
that's the building, that's the way it's gonna look.
Okay.
I commend you for those changes. It's a nice-looking building.
So for right now, effectively, half the building is occupied, the other half is technically
Yes,
available?
and that is for their understanding. They have to occupy 51% of that building for financing purposes, for some reason. And once they start to build out their operation, if they're gonna fill the rest of that with the same sort of a use, they do have to meet the same parking lot requirements. And when they had 8 employees, we were trying to put a finger on that number. You know, the architect also has a square footage, a gross square footage plan in there where he makes reference to, it's like 6,000 square feet. So 230 spaces. But now if the spaces are a foot too small, it's like, you know.
So your plan here was drawn in March of 2020, and then it was twice revised, last being November of 2020.
That was the new plan after Conservation started to work with us.
Okay,
So
so,
the original one that you were referring to about with the variance, that was 42 by 180. Now, this one you're talking about is 40 by 186.
Right.
I think when they took the 2 feet off, they went the other way.
all right, so I mean, the only thing I'm not trying to give you a hard time. The only
No,
thing,
I
the only thing I'm
understand.
suggesting is you need to be consistent with, between the zoning board and what we end up with, so that's just
Right.
my opinion.
But, you know, I think what happened between the variance and the zoning board and conservation and this final plan was all the stormwater management adjustments, you know?
Yeah.
All right, so let's make sure we got everything available and try and get it to all the members before our next meeting, so we have a chance to have it fully digested before we get to the meeting. Okay, on the 21st, we said?
21st.
Yeah, today's the 7th, so 14 and 7 is 21. I can do that.
Not 19.
Yeah.
Right, so I won't need to redo this plan until we meet again, if that's.
Yeah, honestly, I would say just hang on, let us figure
Yeah,
out exactly
okay,
what
no
we need,
problem.
and we'll go from
No
there.
problem.
Because I don't believe we're allowed to approve a site plan that doesn't pretty closely reconcile with what ZBA granted back when they granted the actual variance. And I want to read the variance.
No, I
forward,
know that, and we had this conversation too, it's like, you know, tell them over there not to change anything. That's kind of impossible. I don't know. You know? But then
Okay.
once it's changed and recorded, there's no,
We'll figure it out.
All right, so back to the top of our agenda, other business. So we've got minutes from May 3rd, 2021. Could I could entertain a motion to accept the minutes of May 3rd, 2021?
I move to approve the minutes of May 3rd, 2021 with a slight amendment in the discussion on North Bedford Street. There is a sentence in there that says that the applicant must prove to the building commissioner when an application is submitted for each unit fit out that it meets the Section 5K requirement. I don't think that's consistent with what we voted, nor what, I think there was a discussion relative to parking.
That was discussed, that wasn't a vote.
excuse me, I'm
Okay.
good to go.
You're good, Greg, thank you.
Thanks.
Actually,
You
I
know,
think
if you want to talk to me, feel free, you know how to reach me.
Oh, yeah, no, I appreciate that, thank you.
Okay,
Actually, I believe that's what you said, Roy. Because it's a vacant building right now?
Right, I think we were talking about a determination for parking purposes, however,
Okay, that could be. That could be.
as
that could
opposed
be
to
a mis-
allowing the building commissioner to make a discretion, a judgment that Section 5K leaves to the zoning, to the Board of, Planning Board, excuse me.
$5K is the industrial district though, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, actually, both of those things apply. 5K and the parking bylaw both apply here that
Yeah.
that we have to, but the parking thing we have to take care of. So we've effectively granted him a permit with lack of definition of what the required parking really is. Because we don't know what the use is inside that building.
Well, that's what, so the motion was subject to our approval of use and thereby parking.
Isn't that what you wrote up?
That is what I wrote.
Yeah, well, it has to be used, because the zoning enforcement officer first has to validate the fact that the use they want to go is legally allowed within the industrial district. Then we have to go to step 2, which is determine what the available parking is going to be of the parking spaces that are currently shown on the plan, because depending on what uses he's putting in there, at some point he could run out of parking. He could.
No, well, I mean, the intent of the motion, or the condition rather, was to make sure that the planning board had a say in what the uses were, as I believe it's required to have under 5K.
Well, that's true. That's true.
So, and then likewise, the parking flows on into all of that, as you're saying. That's absolutely correct.
Well, officially, we're the ones that decide that under the special permit process.
Right.
I think the intent was to make sure the building inspector advised us that he's satisfied that
Sure, but
that use meets the requirement as the zoning enforcement officer, but, so what should that say in the minutes?
the applicant must prove to the building commissioner when an application is submitted that each
Could probably say should advise the
First,
plan.
should maybe just, if we add the word must first prove to the building commissioner that it meets the 5K requirement, if the building commissioner, well, I mean, the vote that we took tonight is the vote that we took tonight, I suppose. Maybe I'm being overly,
Yeah, the official vote's gonna end up in that special permit document that we print up, so.
so I suppose that the,
All right, so are we,
let's go back and let's say that we'll vote to approve the minutes as drafted, and shut up.
do we have a second?
How
to
about that?
We did have a second, right? So it's a motion, Riley, second Ken, to accept the minutes as drafted of May 3rd, 2021. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, we'll show that as 6 in favor, none opposed.
Overthinking.
Can we have a motion to approve the bill for WB Mason in the sum total of $38.34?
So moved.
Motion to approve.
Okay, that's a motion, O'Leary, second Riley. Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye. You got it right.
All right, just
You noticed
for everyone's advice, the new subdivision rules and regulations have been filed with the town clerk. They are stamped in and are now official with the town clerk. We're still working on, and I'm gonna get some more advice, maybe talk to a few of you individually as to how we're gonna handle our fees. I think everyone's aware that we have officially now signed on our new consulting engineer. We've had a couple of meetings with him. We're gonna work through that process as quickly as possible to see how we're gonna handle all the financial end of that. A good percentage of the amount of money he gets will be coming from those fees, so. We need to get a better understanding with our new town financial partners downstairs who are changing as well. And our town administrator who is also changing, as we have a temporary town administrator right now. I should use the word interim, I think is the correct word. So we'll keep you all advised of that. I think for now, based on what's here, that's all we need to talk about as a board. We're gonna have to sort out a couple of issues with covenants, but I need to do some research first before we get too much further on that, so I think at this point,
Will we put the covenant on for the 21st? Because it has to be signed, I believe it has to be signed by the board members.
oh yeah, if we have the new covenants drafted, releases that we need to have drafted, yeah, put them on the agenda, because they do have to be signed by the board members. If that's gonna create a problem, we can see if we can get signatures in the interim from the board members. I guess we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second that.
So it's a motion, Lawler, do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Riley, further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And we'll say we're adjourned at 8:44 PM. Thank you all.